Some game books make you a better game master even if you don't actually play their game. Hey everybody, Bobby here, and today I'm going to be covering my top 5 RPG books that, while not Dungeons and Dragons, no matter what game system you do run, there's something in each of these that will make you a better GM, better DM, and just have overall better games. The first game, and we are going from bottom to top. So number 5 is, for me, Gumshoe, but really it's any of the Gumshoe games. This one's the bottom of the list because this has a very important lesson within how the game's designed, but I wouldn't say there's one very specific part of the book, while the others have very specific parts that, like, you can just rip wholesale. The Gumshoe system is a mystery game. It's a detective game, and most of mine are. I do a lot of modern games. I do a lot of mystery games. But the biggest thing about Gumshoe is it has systems for when not to roll the dice, when not to leave things by chance. And to me, that is a super useful tool for game masters to pick up and really master. Now, on top of that, I give it some extra bonus points because it does have kind of a worksheet form fillable area for keeping track of NPCs, but more importantly, you keep track of how often they've shown up, so you know when NPCs haven't been in the story for a while to bring them back in if you're running a game that should be having reoccurring NPCs. That's not for everybody, so this is at the bottom of this list, but it's still a great game. I mean, it's good enough that I have it physically. The next game on this list, I actually don't own physically. I only own digitally. But similar to Gumshoe, it can be any of the books in this line. I own this digitally, even though I use it in so many of my games because I don't run the system. And this one I'm going to show is End of the World, Alien Invasion, but it's the End of the World line. The first one I picked up was the first one that came out, which was the zombie apocalypse. There is also Wrath of the Gods, which I own, which covers games like if Ragnarok happens, or if Cthulhu wakes up in modern day settings. There's also one basically to cover like Terminator type games and, the machines taking over. Blanking on the name of it, I'm going to try and show a picture of the cover. The rule system I don't really use too much. It's by Fantasy Flight Games, and the rule system is very unique in the fact that it is designed for everyone to play themselves. And there is built-in mechanics where everyone kind of polices each other into making sure everybody's honest about who their characters are during character creation. That's not why this book's here, though. Why this book's here is each of these books covers multiple scenarios. So Alien Invasion is a bunch of different alien invasions, and more importantly, every single scenario has in-depth timelines of here's what happens day 1, day 2, week 5, year 7. Really in-depth, really long timelines. And then every scenario, which is an apocalyptic scenario, also has a post-apocalyptic scenario as well. Very, very useful for me no matter what system I'm running, but also it's very good at helping teach GMs how to plot out timelines and courses of events either that are outside of the player's control or what will happen if the players don't intervene. And this one makes the list because specifically they have aftermath scenarios, which is something very much worth thinking about, where maybe it is its own campaign, but fallbacks of what if the players fail? What if the world ends? It doesn't mean the game has to end. And that is where End of the World really, really shines. So it made the list. The next one on this, we're all physical books again for the rest of the list. Number 3 is just like those first two, one where any of them in the line can give you a version of this information. But I'm going to go with the OG, and that's Kids on Bikes. I love Kids on Bikes, but this could also be Kids on Brooms, or my personal favorite, Teens in Space, which I don't own a physical copy of, but I do have this in Kids on Brooms. Kids on Bikes makes the list because of its shared world building. Games that use the Kids on Bikes system, you start by everyone making, in the case of Kids on Bike, the town they live in. And it has this long list of questions that you go around in the circle, and each person answers a question. You build the world together. This game is actually the root of where I came up with my questionnaire list for making fantasy worlds, which I've done a video on before, and I'm going to try and remember to put a card up there because YouTube likes it when you put cards up. But Kids on Bikes is great at teaching you as the GM how to share the world building responsibility, because when the players help make the world, they're automatically so much more invested. My number 2 pick is one where, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you may have thought this would be my number 1 pick, but it is actually Things from the Flood. This is a game you may or may not be familiar with. You see in the bottom it says Tales from the Loop. This is the sequel to Tales from the Loop, and unlike the games beforehand, I would say this and Tales from the Loop are not equal in what it provides. They do provide similar things, where Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood both add mechanical benefits for players role-playing. But Tales from the Loop is where you play younger characters, and you can essentially heal by either having scenes with your anchor, which is an NPC who is your character's emotional anchor, and that can heal them, or they can have scenes with the other players at their base, which is typically like a tree house or a hidden fort in the woods or something like that. It's similar in Things from the Flood, but Things from the Flood keeps the anchor and replaces the conversations at, I'm just going to say, the treehouse, with having scenes based on the group's friction, which is new for this game. And the group's friction is an aspect the entire group shares that causes problems in the group. Having a group where not everything's perfect and there's frequent problems that come up that follow a theme is actually very, very good for adding depth to the character group. But more importantly, while Tales from the Loop goes, hey, you get bonuses whenever you do an RP scene at this location, Things from the Flood goes, you gain this benefit whenever you have an RP scene that meets this theme, which then kind of bridges the gap between an improv exercise and role playing, and again gives mechanical benefits. Combine that with the anchors, which honestly make it where characters are more likely to survive if they have connections outside of the party. Murder hobos, who are the wandering, everyone I love is already dead or never existed characters, are more likely to die because they would not have an anchor. And anchors are hugely important in keeping your character either sane or alive, however you want to look at it, because it's a very loose storytelling system. So from that, Things from the Flood beats out Tales from the Loop. Finally, what I would say is the number 1 RPG book for you as a GM to pick up, even if you don't run the system, that is going to make you a better GM, is City of Mist. Now, I will be honest, this version that I'm holding, this massive tome, which I'm keeping track of pages for a reason you'll see in a second, this tome doesn't exist anymore, or you might be able to find it used, but it's no longer one massive book. It now comes in 2 versions, where there's a player's guide and essentially a GM guide. The part I'm talking about is going to be in the GM guide, so if you have no interest in ever running City of Mist, that's the only part I'm really bringing up. But on top of this being a really cool system and a really fun game, this right here is 30 pages that are essentially a mini textbook on how to write mysteries. Not just for City of Mist, but it uses what's known as the iceberg method, which is a writing and plot structure method for books, novels, all of it, that you can also use as a GM for writing adventures. That has nothing to do with the rules system. It is essentially a textbook on how to write noir mysteries. That makes this game, above and beyond, the best resource I have for becoming a better GM. Because even if mysteries aren't your main version of GMing, eventually you will want to have information the players have to uncover. Whether or not the mystery is the focus of the adventure doesn't mean the iceberg method still isn't incredibly useful. It's also the method on how to essentially go, you know, this scene's going to happen, but then they could go any number of places, and how to let players have a bunch of choices to go do different things cross-pollinate information from different scenes, and it still all culminate down into the one finale you plan anyways. So you make sure your starting and your finale are where you want them to be while still giving them plenty of choice without it being a railroad. City of Mist takes my #1 spot. Anyways, let me know down below what your favorite game books are that made you a better GM, or you would recommend to other new or experienced GMs to help improve their games. And we'll catch you next week. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel. I know everybody says it. It does make a difference. It's how other people find our videos, or, just share them wherever you like to share your RPG content. Anyways, we'll catch you guys next week. Bye!